Weathers and Seasons by Destiny Davis. The focus on this unit, it really focuses on, the student's ability to gain and understand the causes and controls of the weather. They can understand the differences in weather in different places, the climate, and it also helps them learn the seasons. And this will also help them to develop listening skills, creative skills, and problem solving skills while also working on their speaking skills if they're an ELL student. With the objectives, I have 3 that I've picked. Students will be able to define key vocabulary words throughout the unit. Students will be able to compare and contrast different types of weather. Students will be able to identify different types of seasons corresponding to the weather. So the purpose of this unit is to teach students different seasons and weather. It'll help them become familiar with the weather and the changes and patterns around them. And it'll also help them with other things like what to wear during the weather. The materials and resources. I used 5 books. So Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs by Judy Barrett, White Snow, Bright Snow by Alvin Tresselt, and What Will the Weather Be by Linda Duet, and Can You Say What's the Weather Today by Trish Rabe, and Fall Weather, Cooler Temperatures by Martha E. Rustad. And the materials I used were straws, paper cups, tape, a paper book template, manila paper, device of their choosing, empty cups, Sharpies, iPad, or any research thing, pencils, construction papers, markers, and toothpicks, etc. So for the first activity, the book I decided to choose was Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs by Judy Barrett. So in activity 1, the students will measure the rain volume by creating a rain gauge and recording data. And then they will record that data and document the weather each day in their weather journal. The techniques I used for these were for 2nd grade science, Earth and Space. Students will know that there are recognizable patterns in the natural world among objects in the sky. They're expected to measure, record, graph weather information, including temperature and wind conditions, precipitation and cloud coverage, in order to identify patterns in data and identify the weather and seasonal information. Okay, so the second activity that I chose was for the book White Snow, Bright Snow by Alvin Tresselt. And then for activity 2, students will be asked to identify what clothes correspond with each season. And then they will then be asked to illustrate and write a story about their favorite season. Students will participate in a Kahoot after the first part of the activity, and it'll contain questions about different seasons, weather conditions, clothing, and various vocabulary that'll be pulled from the book. So the techniques that I decided to use for this one is 2nd grade science. So it'll be Earth and Space, and then it'll be the students know that there are recognizable patterns in the natural world and among objects in the sky. Students are expected to measure, record, and graph weather information, including temperature, wind conditions, precipitation, and cloud coverage, in order to identify patterns in data. And then B, identify the importance of weather, seasonal information, and make choices in clothing, activities, and transportation. Okay, so for activity 3, the book I chose was What Will the Weather Be by Linda Duet. In activity 3, The students will be asked to identify characteristics of different seasons, weather patterns, and group them on the weather board that we'll have in the classroom. Fairly easy. Students will be grouped together and asked to make their own forecast for the week and record the weather segment in the classroom on the iPads or devices that'll be provided. The TEKS I decided to use for this is from second grade science, Earth and Space. They'll be expected to measure, record, and graph weather information, including temperature, wind conditions, precipitation, cloud coverage, and other things to identify the patterns in the weather. B, identify the importance of weather and seasonal information to make choices in clothing, activities, and transportation. Okay, and so for activity 4, the book I chose was Can You Say What's the Weather Today by Tish Rabb. This is like a cat in a hat book, so I chose this one because I know it would be kind of fun for the students, but students will be asked to make an anemometer with paper cups to test the speed of the wind, and then they'll record that in their weather journal that they're going to create. So the TEKS that I've decided to use for this one is Earth and Space, second grade science. This will help the students to recognize patterns in the natural world, like the wind speed. They can measure, record, and graph weather information, including temperature and wind conditions, and other things. And they'll be able to identify the importance of weather, seasonal information, to make choices in clothing, activities, and transportation. Okay, so for activity 5, the book that we are doing the activities over will be Fall Weather, Cooler Temperatures by Martha E. H. Rustad. So for activity 5, students will be asked to determine which way the wind blows, creating a weather vane to detect the direction of the wind. Students will participate in a class discussion about the weather and why seasons change, which is vaguely going over through the book. Well, not vaguely, it's going over through the book. And the TEKS that I've used for this book is also second grade science, Earth and Space 8. And the students will, begin to recognize patterns in the natural world among objects in the sky. They'll be expected to measure, record, graph the weather information, including temperatures, wind conditions, precipitation, cloud coverage, and other patterns, and identify the importance of weather and seasonal information to make choices of clothing, activities, and transportation. Okay, so a few discussion questions for the students would be, what is your favorite season? What does the word meteorologist mean? And what is your favorite part of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs? And what food would you like it to rain? What should you wear when it's snowing? What device would you use to test the speed of wind? In the fall, what are some of your favorite things to do? And what are the benefits of the seasons? And what weather does each season bring? I'm sorry. So after the discussion questions, the way that I would evaluate the students would be through an formative assessment through discussions and interactions with the students, 2 observation assessments, 1 for comprehension through the writing activities, and through the video weather forecast activity that they will have to do. That will really show me if they got the concept of weather and the seasons and how everything is, supposed to go. And a summative assessment through Kahoot. And then I would also give them another summative assessment or assess them through their artwork projects that they'll be doing through the class.